Hello folks, and welcome to this week's review. And before I go any further, if you want to skip around this video, check down below in the description. There's all kinds of chapter headings and you can do just that. So this week's review, it's an amplifier, an integrated amplifier from Audiolab, and it's called the Audiolab 9000A, and it costs £1,999. Now, it was back in mid-2019 that I reviewed Audiolab's 6000A integrated amplifier. That particular design left a big impression on me, and that's not because it fell on me or anything like that. No, it was for sonic reasons. There wasn't, and there still isn't, much serious competition for integrated amplifiers under £1,000. Now, some observers, rather oddly I have to say, still see that market as crowded, but I would disagree. Sure, there are numerous designs out there, but the numbers of seriously competitive amplifiers available to buy under £1,000, well, they are actually few in number. Now, Audiolab saw this gap, as it were, and decided to attack that particular consumer sector. And they did, in my opinion, a tremendous job producing a balanced and accomplished amplifier design. One that, to my mind at least, is the best all-rounder for the price. With the 9000A, on the other hand, Audiolab is aiming at a genuinely crowded and tougher area of the market. This one, as I say, is priced at £1,999, which means it gets up towards and it sort of nudges and it snuggles against the big boys. We've got lots of amplifiers in this area, from people like Rigby and Name and Icon Audio and Copland and Lima and Parasound and Moon, and a whole host of interesting and accomplished designs. So there's a lot more going on in this price sector, although Audiolab is trying to attract you in by undercutting much of that competition in terms of price, while at the same time piling on the features and attempting to keep the quality of the sound high. So you can see Audiolab's tactics here, and well, perfectly valid they are as well. But what about the amplifier itself? What features does it provide? Well, I think we can best view those features via our closer look. And welcome to the closer look section for the Audiolab 9000A integrated amplifier. And if we look at the front of this amplifier, and very nice it is as well, and we range from left to right, we begin with the large screen. If you saw my video last week of the 9000 CD Transport, and if you didn't, I'll put a link up in the corner. If you saw that, you will recognize this screen because it's basically the same screen. And this screen displays all of the essential information you need in terms of this amplifier, the 9000A. That means the current source, the current volume, and all that kind of stuff. There is a swathe of display options here. So you can display a faux analog VU meter. You can also display a faux digital VU meter. However, I'm not a fan of these. I've said it before in my review of the Omnia from Audiolab. Again, link up in the corner. I didn't like them then. I don't really like them now. I ignored this bit. However, the screen itself is very useful. There's lots of important information here, and they can be accessed via the menu command. Those menu options include user selectable filters for the built-in DAC, and we'll get to the DAC in a moment. There's an upsampling option, which is defaulted to on. There's a balance control, a volume power on limit, so you don't blow your speakers when you turn this thing on. You can change the time out display for this display, the brightness of this display, and lots of additional goodies. Back to the front fascia now, and proceeding in an easterly direction, you'll also find a chunky source select knob. There's a mode menu select knob. There's also a headphone socket as well. And I'm pretty happy with this particular socket because it's a full size affair of 6.35 millimeters. I do prefer the full size version because, well, when you've got an amplifier of around 2K, you want to have fairly high-end-ish headphones to go along with it. And there are, I find, better quality headphones out there sporting the full-size termination, 6.35 millimeters. But let's not stop here, shall we? Let's carry on in our rightward direction. We will find, as we move, a large volume control, which is also a mute button if you push the thing in, if you wish. There's also a power button on the far right, and just above that power button is a power light. Let's twist to the rear now, and we will find a rocker power switch just above an IEC socket. To the right, you'll see your speaker terminals, and next to those are some trigger automation controls. There's a USB-A port. That's really there just for updates, but there is a USB-B port, so you can use your laptop, for example, as a sound source. Just above there is a Bluetooth aerial. To the right of the aerial is a host of digital inputs, so you'll see a pair of opticals, for example, and a pair of coax ports as well, and a pair of balanced inputs. As we continue to the right, we see a bank of single-ended RCAs. The first pair are outputs devoted to a preamp. Then you see inputs for single-ended power amplifier, 3 pairs of single-ended inputs to connect things like, well, what, your CD player maybe, or an external phono amplifier. Speaking of a phono amplifier, there is actually a built-in phono amplifier into the 9000A, and there's a pair of sockets for those here. And there's also a grub screw for a grounding wire from your turntable. Oh, and you do get a remote, but anyone familiar with the 6000A amplifier or the 6000 CDT or even the 9000 CDT will know all about this particular remote. It's exactly the same one. In broad terms, the 9000A can be operated as an integrated amplifier. That's what I'll be doing during this review. Or, if you feel like, you can use it as a pure preamp and you can connect a separate power amp to it. Or you can use this as a pre-power combo for an AV system to enable you to add additional processing to the hi-fi chain. As for the basic design of the 9000A, well, you're looking at a Class AB amp, and that pumps out 100 watts into 8 ohms. As for the DAC, well, that's an ESS 9038 Pro 32-bit DAC. That supports up to 768 kHz PCM or DSD 512. And USB is able to take advantage of the full 768 kHz. Optical and coax, well, they're limited to 192 kHz. Available in black and silver and weighing in at 9.4 kilograms. The 9000A spans 444 millimeters by 89 by 342 millimeters. But what does this thing sound like? Well, let's go to the sound quality tests and we'll find out. To begin the sound tests, I came over all digital and I grabbed a 9000 CDT, hooked that to a benchmark DAC2 HDC DAC, and I plugged that lot into the 9000A, and I listened to a heap of finger-picking guitar from Leo Kottke, and the album Regards from Chuck Pink on Private Music, and I played the track I Yell at Traffic. This is an acoustic guitar piece, an instrumental with, I would say, restrained percussion and a violin accompanying. Now, let me give you a bit of context here, because in general terms, I find that quality hi-fi tends not to shout at you. Poor or merely average hi-fi, well, it does that very thing. It sounds a bit like AV equipment. Average hi-fi tries to impress you with explosions and grunting V12 engine noises. Quality hi-fi, well, it tends to avoid that path. It's rather more civilized. The 9000A is one of those boxes. The mids and the treble on the 9000A, for example, well, they need to be discovered. So, at first listen, you might very well say, after a couple of minutes, well, what's all the fuss about? I can't hear any difference. What you're going to do with this one is give it time. Allow your brain to relax into the music. Stop trying. That's one of the big problems I find when people demo new hi-fi. They try too much. They go searching. They want immediate gratification. You won't get that with the 9000A, as you won't get that, incidentally, with the 9000 CDT. Take your time, relax, and let the music just sort of wash over you. And then you'll realize that there's magic at play here. So what did this CD Transport DAC setup sound like? Well, if you have a 6000A and maybe you're looking to upgrade to the 9000A, what will you hear? What will be the differences in sonic terms? Are there any? Well, yes, you bet there are differences. The 9000A is a different beast in sonic terms to the 6000A. Yes, there are family connections between the two, but there are immediate differences as well. What the 6000A does not deliver, what the 9000 does in spades, is a great amount of instrumental separation. So let's give you a specific example of what I mean here. So the 9000A grabs the violin and then it moves it to the right. And what that means is the violin now sits in space all on its own. It's away from the rather energetic acoustic guitar. So that means you can hear more of this violin because it's sitting in its own space now. It can be fully seen, as it were, by the ear. And that means for the first time you can hear how mischievous this violin is. It flits here and there. This violin, you now suddenly realize, is being played with a smile. It's darn cheeky, is this violin. And I only got part of that from the 6000A. You can hear elements, sure, from the 6000A, but the 9000A gives you the full picture. In addition to that, well, the guitar strings are enhanced in terms of clarity. Kottke is known for his busy hands. The thing is, when you listen to Leo Kottke play a guitar, you're doubtful that he just has the two hands. You think, well, surely this guy has 6 or 7. Such is the busy manner of his play, of his creativity, which is why I selected this album for review in the first place. The 9000A was able to separate the flying mass of plucked guitar strings into a kind of rainbow of sonic colors. Now, all of these effects, they were further enhanced because of the full bass response. The 6000A also has a full bass response, but the 9000A, it goes that bit further and it accentuates it. That's evident even on this track, which is dominated by acoustic guitar. So there's a real resonance from the body of the guitar itself. It has a real weight and it feels full. There's a real presence from the 9000A during this track. So bass on the Audiolab 9000A is more than just mass, and it's more than power. Any big amplifier can do power. That's easy. Just throw watts at the problem. And after all, there's 100 watts in this particular box. No, like the 9000 CDT I reviewed recently, bass on the 9000A does more. It gives music a full, rich, luxurious sound. It makes music sound expensive. I then took the benchmark DAC out of the picture and I plugged the 9000 CDT directly into the rear of the 9000A using the 9000A's own built-in ESS DAC. Now, while the 9000A in this configuration didn't really have the same level of detail retrieval, didn't quite have the same mid-range insight, didn't really have the same tonal accuracy, even so, the internal DAC still performed very well for a freebie, which is what it is. However, even though the internal DAC pulled back a bit in terms of performance, it still retained the essential personality of the sound, and it does remain a worthy feature here. I do like the internal DAC. Oh, and incidentally, I used the default user setting, the one that Audiolab sets on. I thought that was perfectly fine, and so I didn't change anything in terms of filters. I brought in the USB-B port and I hooked my laptop to that. And I took advantage of DSD for this particular test and I played Elvis Presley's The Girl of My Best Friend at DSD 64. And again, generally speaking, the USB output retained the same personality as the external DAC, although I do prefer the CD Transport external DAC combo. That was the best sound output so far in this test. Even so, there was a very clean and open soundstage from USB Play. Lots of detail on offer here, plenty of bass to support that detail, and a sprightly pace to back everything up. Next up, I tried vinyl. I played the hit single for Bruce Hornsby, The Way It Is, from the album of the same name from RCA, and I played that on my high-end Origin Live Sovereign turntable, and I also plugged in the valve-based 2-box Icon Audio Phono amplifier, and I was very impressed at the sonic response from vinyl play via the 9000A. There was tons of space and air around the soundstage. The sonic response was clean with a distinct purity around the upper mid-range area. The piano, a notoriously difficult instrument to control by any hi-fi system, was given room to express itself here. Piano sounded authoritative, yet light on its feet. Those piano strings offered a lavish feedback. It was quite opulent, in fact. Yet there was a real sense of pace here as well. Again, some amplifiers allow bass to smudge a little, which means a loss of precision, which then drags the music down. The 9000A, well, that offered the opposite. Lots of snappy music and a high tempo response. Focus, well, that was pinch sharp without any hint of mid-range smearing, while the bass provided a strong backdrop, carrying the entire song with ease. So that was the external phono amplifier, you might say. I tested the internal one now. So I grabbed my Riga RP3 and I plugged that into the internal phono amplifier inside the 9000A. And using the same record source, I was happy to hear a good response. Again, not quite as good as the external model, but then for a freebie, this was pretty darn good. Again, I was very happy with it, especially if you're an occasional vinyl listener or your budget is such that you've spent it all on this particular 9000A, and while you're saving for an external phono amp, which I would recommend, the internal is fine to be getting on with. I then turned to Bluetooth, which I didn't tell you, did I? Bluetooth 5.1, that's what's supported here. And in Bluetooth, I played a selection of the Fleet Foxes at 24-bit 48K. I played some Nick Cave at 24-bit 96, and some Miles Davis at 24-bit 88.2. And I played all of those via my Astle & Kern CAN Alpha digital player. And I was very happy to see that the 9000A supports LDAC. Not many do. More hi-fi should support this codec. It's the best codec out there. It blows away all those aptX variants. I love LDAC, and again, very happy to see that Audiolab has included it here. Via LDAC, I was impressed how the 9000A maintained that sprightly pace again during the different tempos from these varied artists. High energy pieces provided a big bass response and heaps of information. As for the jazz piece, well, that managed to pick up subtle and low-key details with ease. And finally, I turned to headphones. I grabbed a pair of ye old Sennheiser HD 650s and I plugged those into the internal headphone amplifier for the 9000A. And again, I was very pleased to hear that the headphone amplifier maintains the personality of the overall amplifier. Now you might say, well, what's the big deal with that? Well, too often, built-in headphone amplifiers, they sound a bit like a cuckoo, nothing like the host amp. Too often, built-in headphone amplifiers can sound nothing like the main amplifier. And to my mind, that's just wrong. Well, the 9000A doesn't have that issue. The built-in amplifier here retains the 9000A's own personality, which means in this case I heard the same open mid-range, sprightly pace to that bass, and oodles of sumptuous detail. So that's basically my review of the 9000A. So let me give you a few final thoughts, then we'll do some pros and cons and a rating. The 9000A is a fascinating release. Now I have a theory, and it's probably totally wrong, and Audiolab will probably shout at me. However, I think Audiolab recognizes that there's far too much competition in this price point. So what they've tried to do is to shave off the price, which is very wise, especially in the times we're living in at the moment. So they've undercut quite a lot of the competition. Now, at the same time, they've shaved a few pennies off the build budget and hence the final price because they've used, well, technology from the Omnia, for example, with that menu screen. So that's not new. That doesn't mean you're going to have to spend lots of money on new research. The technology is already there, so that lowers your price point. The sound quality around all of that, again, that's very high. So you've got great value, you've got superb sound quality, and you've got a relatively low price. Everyone's a winner. It never forces music into your ears. It doesn't tell you what to hear. It never dominates the rest of your hi-fi. Instead, the 9000A sets out to charm and delight, and it does just that. Pros and cons. In the good section, we have a large feature set. Just about everything you need in terms of inputs and outputs and everything in between is packed into this relatively low-cost amplifier. And when I say relatively low cost, well, the 9000A offers excellent value for money. And for that price point, I was very happy with the solid build quality. In terms of sound, the mid-range transparency was excellent. I loved the rich bass presentation, and that soundstage was beautifully spacious and airy. My only tiny niggle, and I really have to try to find anything bad about the 9000A, were a few of those little software gimmicks, those VU meters on the screen, but really, it's no big deal. Which is why I'm giving the Audiolab 9000A a 9 out of 10, deeply groovy. Congratulations to Audiolab. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. And if I could ask you down there somewhere, if you could click on the like and subscribe buttons, it will just help this channel to grow, helps the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. Also down there, you will find links to my social media platforms, especially my Facebook group, which you're welcome to join, and my website, which has all kinds of info you won't find on this channel. Same thing with my Patreon page, which has all kinds of exclusives. And if you can find somewhere deep in your heart the will to support me, I will be completely grateful. Thank you very much. Because the Patreon page funds this channel, keeps me going. I'll be back on Friday, the Hi-Fi News Etc. video on a Friday. I hesitate because there may be a bit of a special, well, there's something in the air. And I might be doing a special of sorts, so there may be a lot more etc. than Hi-Fi News, but we'll see. In the meantime, I hope to have your company on Friday for whatever turns up, and I hope to see you then. So, until then, folks, bye-bye for now.